This video is going to take an immense amount of honesty in order to truly receive the benefits of what I'm about to say. And before we get started, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Micaiah Bell. I'm a former Harvard graduate, former Harvard football player, also a graduate of Oxford, studied psychology, and then a master's in sociology, respectively. And I spent a lot of time just studying the social sciences and just trying to understand people, how they think, what they believe in, how they operate, and also just on a journey to understand how we operate within ourselves, how we make sense of the world that we're in, how we can become better as people, overcoming the fears, the phobias, the different ways of thinking, starting to understand how much these things actually impact our lives and how much they truly affect the way that we view the world. And in coming to those conclusions and in studying these things, one thing that I've realized is that pride is the root of all social fear. The immense desire to be liked by someone is the root of any social phobia. Now, of course, we can talk about the disorders and that sort of thing, but when it comes to the social fears, all of these things stem from something within us. It's all about appraisal. There is really no sort of gene that predisposes us to be more socially anxious than other people. There's no sort of heritable trait that is directly passed down within our bloodstream that causes us to act a certain way. It's more so just about what you appraise, what you deem as being valuable, what you look at and state that this is what I want. And that is what internally and intrinsically motivates us. But it also can be our biggest enemy in a lot of ways. So let's talk about this. The first thing you have to understand is that in psychology, there are two types of pride. There's authentic pride and hubristic pride. Authentic pride is that feeling of just feeling good about who we are as people. We feel confident in ourselves. We love the life that we live. We love ourselves. Then you have hubristic pride, which is that feeling where we feel like we're better than other people. And a lot of people fall into the camp of hubristic pride. And you can see this in so many different philosophies and religions that all of them talk about being overly prideful leads to calamity, leads to ruin. What I've realized is that the only reason why people are afraid of social situations is because they want to be liked. And in a lot of ways, fears, anxieties are really just an immense desire for the inverse of whatever it is that you're afraid of. So people will say, oh, I have social anxiety. But what it really is an immense desire to be accepted by a group of people. And the reason why I can say that is because there are some groups that people feel anxious within, other groups that they don't feel anxious in at all. And those levels of anxiety vary within those groups. And almost every single time, and I would say every single time, the one thing that is consistent amongst the groups in which people feel anxious is that they feel like they need the approval of the people who they're trying to appease. Whether it's going into a work meeting, whether it's being in a social setting around people who are just like you, whether it's going on a date, whether it's anything that has to do with other people, how much you want to be desired, liked, or accepted by the other person, by the other group of people, is going to determine how anxious you are. And what I see so much is that people try and change the way that they operate, they change the way that they act, they quite literally change who they are as a person in order to be accepted by a group of people. And what you realize is that if you truly didn't care what other people thought about you, you would not feel anxious. Like, think about that for a moment. If you truly sat back and said, I don't care whether these people like me or not, you wouldn't feel anxious. You will feel a certain level of confidence that perhaps you've never even felt before. And it could just be the case that all this time you've been seeking approval from people. You felt like you had to perform in front of people. Maybe you've been taught since you were a child that you have to sit a certain way, you have to speak a certain way, you have to present yourself in a certain way for other people to like you. And there's been so much pressure on you to be liked by other people and to represent yourself very well, so forth and so on, that you can't even wrap your head around this concept of not caring about what other people think. I think it's a delicate balance because there is also an element of presenting yourself well, right? And not being the type of person who is disrespectful to other people or is mean to other people or who looks down upon other people. But there is a certain element of we're all human at the end of the day. And the acceptance of other people is not the end all be all. And what you find is that people who are afraid to offend other people, those are oftentimes, we call that people pleasing. Those are oftentimes fueled by pride. And what you realize is that the darkest traits that we have about ourselves have the ability to mask themselves as whatever they need to be in order to stay in your life. And people refuse to admit the fact that it is not that they truly want to help people or truly want to please other people that makes them a people pleaser. It's that they want to be liked by other people. It's that they have a desire to feel superior based on how someone else has perceived them. And that's what motivates them to act in a certain way. And that external pressure they put on themselves, it's really an internal pressure that they put on themselves to be accepted by a group of people. And what you realize is that when you come to the point where, well, I'll say it like this, you will reach a point where you have to make a decision on whether you will care about if people will like you or not, or whether you care about being a true, authentic version of yourself. And no matter which route you go down, it's going to have pros and cons to both. And you have to decide about which ones you actually want, which ones you care about. If you choose to be authentic, you might lose people, especially people who you gain by being this fake version of yourself. You might not be accepted by all these different people, but it's going to come at the great gain of no longer feeling like you have to present a certain version of yourself, no longer feeling that social anxiety, no longer feeling those social phobias and fears. If you decide to continue down the path of getting people to like you, well, then you end up living a life that's not truly yours. And in your internal home life, people are going to say you're a completely different person. And even if they don't say that, you'll know it to yourself. Who I've become is not who I wanted to be. People always talk about these people who you see on TV who made these horrendous decisions, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. Why would they do that? Oh my God, I'd never do something like that. And what you don't realize is that those decisions aren't made overnight. That decision was made 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 or 5, a decade ago, when they decided to do something in order to gain someone else's approval, instead of doing what they knew to be truly authentic to themselves. You can see this time and time again in actors and musicians and just people and bosses, CEOs, people just in life. You don't become a version of yourself that you didn't want to be overnight. You became that version of yourself months, years, decades ago when you made these decisions and decided to continue down that path. And you might think, oh, well, it doesn't matter for just this one decision. Well, every decision is just one decision. So all decisions just add up. Like, you don't get a big opportunity to do something out the blue. No, it comes by building up these smaller opportunities until eventually a bigger one comes along and finds you. So what I tell people all the time is, if you want to overcome social anxiety, the number one cure is to not care about what people think, to not really seek their approval. But how do you do that? Well, the best way to do that, I've done a video on this, is to just be curious. If you truly went into something and you were just curious about the outcome, you didn't really think about whether it was going to go right or wrong, whether it was going to be favorable or not. You were just curious. You're like, yeah, I don't really care. We're just going to see what happens. And you went into it with that mindset. Then regardless of the outcome, you wouldn't really be upset by it. You'd say, oh, well, this didn't go in a good way. It didn't go in a bad way. But what really is a good or bad way? You don't really truly know until everything's said and done. So that being said, going into it with a mind of curiosity, where you're not seeking out the approval of other people, where you're not presenting this fake version of yourself in order to be liked by someone else, where you don't care how other people perceive you, but rather you're just curious. And the last thing I'll say is, so many people are focused on themselves. How will other people perceive me? And not enough people are focused on, how can I impact someone else's life? And what I found is that the people who focus on how they can impact other people's lives are the ones who have no social anxiety. Time and time again, people who externally receive their gratification from how they treat other people, those are the ones who don't really care what other people think. They're so focused on how they can impact and make someone else's life better that they're not focused on whether someone else likes them or not. And I would say this level of deep introspection to see, is it truly the case that you have pride and that's the only reason why you care about what other people think? Do you need to focus on other people more than you're focusing on yourself and how you're presenting yourself to other people? These are things that take immense amounts of introspection and immense amounts of honesty in order to come to a conclusion. So that's really all I have. I would encourage you guys to really think deeply about this. It's not a long video, it's a really short one, but I wanted to get to the root of why people have social anxiety and why people have social phobias. Feel free to like and subscribe, share with other people. Really appreciate it. And until the next time, keep improving.